Hello ghosts and ghouls, and welcome to another episode of Danica Raven's BiteSize Horror. This week I have a very special guest. I'm at Gibbet FX Studio here with Callum McDonald.
Hello.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you do here?
Well, I do a little bit of everything. I'm a special effects artist, and that covers quite a large range of things from creature design, prosthetics, building spaceships, blood effects, always very popular. Anything in a film, basically, if they're not sure how they can do it, they usually give me a ring, and I see if I can figure it out.
Would you say Blood and Wounds is your most popular?
It's a very popular one because you have generally just in thrillers and stuff like that. Everyone wants gunshots and things like that, and with gunshots come blood and gore. You know, not everything horror related. Has gunshots per se, but most thrillers usually do. So it's quite a regular thing getting that.
Thrillers these days are almost all gunshots, whereas horrors, I imagine, would be more slashing and clawing and stabbing.
Yeah, you get a lot of things embedded in people's heads and faces and things like that. Syringes and eyes and all that kind of thing.
What's the most unusual object you've had to embed in somebody's face or ligament?
Off the top of my head, pardon the pun. But a syringe was certainly one of the more unusual requests recently. I've got a project which just recently wanted a knife in someone's skull. There's so many of them that half the time I can never remember how many different embeddings I've done.
It's fair enough.
Yeah.
You have to pick different angles, I'm sure.
Yeah, it all merges into one sort of gelatinous blob. Sorry if I can't be more helpful.
No, quite right. How about then instead, what is the most unusual project that you can think of that you've had to do?
Well, they're all pretty unusual. Mm-hmm. I mean, sort of, there was a project where it was a science fiction film. It was a short science fiction film, and set in the future, where no one could afford healthcare.
Right.
So the gist of it was this guy and his wife got hold of a virtual reality, a VR headset, which you could then put a medical program in, and it was for training doctors. But they got hold of a faulty one, and they perform an appendectomy at home on the kitchen table with this thing which keeps on glitching all the time. So that was quite a good project because I got to make the VR helmet, and I also got to build close-up part up where they were operating on, so like the internal organs and all that, and various prosthetics for the different stages of stitching up. The big joke in that as well was that because it was glitching a lot, she actually removes part of his duodenum by accident and sews them back up. So that was a funny project. That was good. There's lots of these kind of, every now and then you sort of get kind of interesting wee projects which have got a bit of a twist in it. That one felt like it would work quite well as a Black Mirror kind of episode. That was good. And of course I work with a company called Scare Scotland a lot as well, and they always sort of seem to end up getting really, really odd kind of gigs.
Yes. So you get some weird requests through there.
Very, very strange requests. Up until recently, they were doing something which was for Nerf.
Yes.
Nerf guns, and they kept on doing this event down at Ocean Terminal. Mm-hmm. I think it was called Terminal Infection.
I think it was. I heard a lot about it. I didn't
know
that one, but a lot of the other scarers told me about that.
Yeah, it was quite good fun, but they were there just as zombies. So I was doing the zombies up for them, and they would be away in this closed down shopping centre at night with all these kids running around screaming, firing foam darts at each other. And they'd just be wandering around randomly as kind of zombies.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of quite surreal because I'd just do the makeup and then just sit in a darkened room you know,
So you can
an
just
old
hear this
stock
going
room
on.
for hours and just hear these kind of screaming children. And then you come out into the light of day and it's just a place covered with some Nerf darts and these zombies wandering around. You get quite a lot of surreal situations.
Yes, definitely would.
Yeah. Just even to the places where you have to do makeup. So I've had to do makeup on folk in public toilets before, you know, sort of stuff like that. It's not all glamour.
So what got you into this line of work in the first place?
Well, I was a bit of a weird kid. I was obsessed by robots, dinosaurs, Star Wars, yeah, kind of usual suspects. I really loved the Ray Harryhausen films when I was growing up as well. So that was a time where you could actually take on in the cinema. So it's kind of see stop motion that big. So 7 volumes of Sinbad, you know, Clash of the Titans, all that kind of stuff. And I kind of got into all the kind of model building. And I was a Games Workshop geek as well, you know, doing all the little figures. And then when it came to the time of actually going out into the real world, you know, I wanted to go to art college, and the best fit for what I'd kind of been doing anyway, I had originally wanted to do film and TV, but I switched to animation, which meant that I could do stop motion animation, make monsters and all that kind of stuff. And the great thing about that was also it kind of taught you about story writing and editing and, you know, putting everything together. So my basis was originally as a stop motion animator. That's what I graduated in. And a lot of my friends at the time were also doing their own short films and wanting to move into film. And every now and then they'd have a kind of weird request, or, can you do this? No, give it a crack. And so have a go at that. And just over time, you know, I just found myself just doing lots of little different things. So I mean, I cover quite a wide area of sort of prosthetics and creature design and model building. And a lot of these things go back, you know, to earlier days of when I was younger. Anyhow, I suppose the more recent thing is actually adding prosthetics. Which is something which I hadn't been doing prior to that. But the rest of them are just kind of cumulative skills which have just kind of been developed over the years, you know. And before you know it, you've just got tons of... For years I didn't really think how I had the skills to kind of call myself a special effects artist, and then I sort of kind of realised that actually I know a lot more about these various things, including filmmaking itself, you know, so... But it's not something which you can certainly just leave college and go, I'm a special effects artist.
No.
Which, unfortunately, there's quite a lot of colleges at the moment which teach prosthetics as part of their makeup courses because they become quite popular. And they're kind of teaching the students, you know, valuable skills, but the students aren't actually getting any knowledge about how films are made, or sort of, why you would be using prosthetics in a certain way. For example, traditionally, a lot of theatre makeup is using materials which are known as out-of-kit materials, which we've got like a 2-part putties or scar wax and all this kind of stuff, which are all right for applying each night, you know, just before the performance, because in theatre, it's a very linear experience. You've got a beginning, middle, end, and it runs in that direction. But if you're doing film, it's often shot out of sequence, and you've got things like pickups as well. So you've got to make sure, you know, it's going to match up from take to take. So that's why you're doing prosthetics in that case. So it's going to match every single time. So that's been a fun one to kind of learn a lot more about.
Because you'll definitely have had to learn what holds together longer, what materials work best together.
Yeah. You do get a feel for what would work in the given circumstances, and also you tend to find that budget is always kind of a thing which you have to deal with quite a lot. It's often heartbreaking when someone comes to you with a great idea or a great script, and they go, "Oh, this is fantastic. This is fantastic. Or, yeah, I'd love to get my teeth into that. So, what sort of budget have you got? Oh, right, we've got this," and it's just going, "Yeah, you're dreaming. You know, there's no way that could actually cover what you want." So.
Yep, you're going, we might be able to get some fake blood and some very cheap water makeup.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's one which chap I was chatting to, so we came up with a design for a creature. It kind of, and then gave him sort of a bit of leeway in cost. So said, right, we can bring this down. If in order to get your thing going, we maybe do this mask in latex, so you can shoot scenes where it's further away, you know, rather than up close. If you actually manage to raise the money for the rest of it, then we'll do a silicon multi-piece sort of thing, which silicon's really kind of the industry standard when you sort of want prosthetics these days, because it's translucent and behaves like skin, and you can punch hair into it. And it's lovely stuff, but it's not cheap. No. Anyway, we kind of agreed on that, and so did the mask. And then he had a chat with, turns out, his cousin is a very talented artist. She worked as a vet or something, and so decided that she wanted to have a go at designing the creature as well, and kind of go, right, okay, and so would you have a look at these drawings and sort of see if this would work? And it's kind of, yeah, lovely drawings, but completely impractical, because this creature was meant to be a ghoul in a very kind of Lovecraftian way, so it's anthropoid kind of creature. So we're really talking about man in a suit, but the improved design had turned it into a massive sort of kind of bat-like creature with wings.
That's not a ghoul anymore.
Well, that's it. I was kind of going, yeah, it's not a ghoul for me. It's not a Lovecraftian ghoul, which is part of the thing that really appealed to me for the project. And I'm a massive H.P. Lovecraft fan as well. I love the whole Cthulhu mythos. That's, again, I suppose the kind of alien species. I sort of kind of love the fact that it's weirdly science fiction as well. It's horror. But I ended up having just to sort of say to him, well, look, you know, you've got lots of problems here. It's going to make it really expensive. Also, let's remember that you've got this guy in a suit, in the script, the ghoul, gets shot and falls into the water. So it's going to have to be in water. Yeah. When you're shooting that. You need a safety diver for every person that you have in water. Yeah, it's a law, basically. In case they get into trouble, you've got to have someone to lift them out. Now, if you had sort of this bat-winged thing, then you're going to need sort of a couple of people to puppeteer the wings as well as making it a lot heavier. So then you're going to have, presumably, a camera person would be in the water, so you've got a diver for them. And then you'd have 2 puppeteers, at least. Yeah. So you'd have 2 divers for them. And then you'd have the actor, because it's in a large costume. You're probably wanting 2 divers for the actor as well. You know, because it's a massive costume, and it just starts racking up. And so, yeah, sometimes you have to kind of lance their dreams, unfortunately, but I mean, these things aren't usually quite as much of a problem, you know, if we had a larger industry up here. But the industry, special effects industry in Scotland is really way behind the rest of the country. I mean, behind Wales and Northern Ireland, you know, and it's frighteningly shocking how that's actually been allowed to happen. We've managed to we missed out on the original Lord of the Rings. It was originally going to film here, but we didn't have the infrastructure. And rather than sort of saying, oh, right, well, maybe we should do something about that, nothing was done, which meant that we then missed out on Game of Thrones. It was originally going to shoot here.
Because it started shooting here, didn't it? In the start of season 1, I believe.
Yeah, and then...
That was it. It was like pilot and then no.
Yeah. So it's moved to Belfast and basically given Northern Ireland an entire film industry, which we missed out on. Now there's talk of change. A few studios kind of possibly opening up here, which might sort of kind of bring more work along. But my feeling is, because there's talk of the new Lord of the Rings series being filmed here, but my feeling is that in the same way that Belfast brought up a lot of folk from down south initially to kind of start up the whole kind of a special effects industry there, I think it's initially going to be folk even from Belfast now decamping over here initially until they can train up enough locals. Me, give me a job. Because I just want, I'd like something like that to kind of make my life a little bit easier, you know, sort of like some regular, well-paid work rather than sort of, stepping from stone to stone. So
that's always the hope within creative jobs, and it is especially, as you say, tricky in this country.
Yeah.
Because creative jobs become a labour of love, unfortunately.
Yeah,
and it shouldn't have to be that way. As you say, especially if Wales and Ireland are doing so well at the moment as well.
Well, I think it's possible to sort of kind of carry on the way I'm going, because I was partly stubborn. It's partly my own fault. I should have moved down to London like everyone else does and just got into the industry that way. And I still live down in London, but I'm stubborn because I like living up here, and I don't see why I should have to sort of go to, I'm not a big fan of London, there's just too many people. So I just stuck it out up here and just realised no one else is doing this at all.
Yeah,
you know,
so you're
no in
more
Scotland
of a niche.
at all.
I mean, is that how you managed to get into doing more of the teaching and things here as well? Is it a lot?
A lot of that stuff actually came about in the last 3 or 4 years, where I just kind of decided enough is enough. I'm going to just nail my statement to the mast, you know, go, right, I'm here, so no one else is doing it. So, and weirdly, you know, it's kind of worked once you kind of get a reputation of doing courses, which I also do, because one of my frustration is that growing up in Scotland, apart from maybe going to art college, there was nowhere, no one teaching this. How the hell do you get your foot in the door? And situation's pretty much similar today. There are courses, but they're kind of full time. So you've got to have the time, you know, and the money in order to commit to 4 years of doing a course, which it doesn't really suit everyone. So part of the course idea was that, well, what if there's just kind of little blocks and people can kind of come in and learn a particular skill?
Yep.
And that's been really popular. And now actually got a lot of students and their tutors coming in to get taught. So that's kind of interesting that, you know, there wasn't even, I mean, there's a lot of these courses now down south, which do a lot of the training, and they're really popular. I actually did one myself at Millennium Effects and Neil Gorton's prosthetic studio, and it was great, but it was 7 weeks, and I managed to get a little bit of funding for it as well, and bring up the rest of it to match it. And I think the whole thing ended up costing about 10 grand.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, the course itself back then was about 6.5 grand for the 7 weeks. And then on top of that, you've got to remember that you've got accommodation and travel. And that's what brings it up. And it's not so bad if you're down south. You're local to the area. It's not, you
But if
commute.
you move down there, it's totally different.
But it puts us at a massive disadvantage up here. I mean, sort of if you're already sort of struggling to kind of get money to maybe do a course, which you kind of maybe to your mind is a bit kind of like, oh, feels a bit frivolous, but it's something I want to do. You're further likely to be dissuaded if you have to then travel to the other end of the country and pay for your accommodation on it. So that's part of the reason I just kind of thought, well, having courses of different sizes, most of them are weekend introduction ones, but I do longer ones which are more 6-day blocks, which mean that you can get more into the nitty-gritty of various things.
Where do people find you for getting involved in these courses?
The internet is your friend.
Yes,
basically.
definitely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Google searches. So apparently, I'm the first one that crops up if you do special effects courses Scotland. So
it's always good to be the first one on the list.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. So and some of it's word of mouth as well. I think when I've had tutors come in, often the colleges have sort of training grants which they have to use for staff training. So like the tutors are suddenly, oh wow, there's something I can do that. So I'm also finding, oddly enough, in several cases, students are actually on courses which are teaching them the skills at the moment, sort of kind of coming in just wanting refreshers, sort of like, or they're wanting to sort of make sure that the end project is up to scratch and is going to come in for a bit of extra tuition. So,
well, a wee bit extra study or another chance to see a different way you can do something, which is very valuable.
Often that's the case as well. Sort of wondering what they could do. I've had quite a few folk in who have never really sculpted before, because I think most people's experiences with working with clay is probably limited to maybe school.
Yeah.
When 1 week you got a lump of clay and 40 minutes to play around with it, and maybe you got to fire it, and that's it. Mm-hmm. So most people are kind of completely unaware of what you can do with clay, which is quite a revelation, because I think it's one of the fundamental things in human creativity is before anyone even learnt to paint, cave paintings or anything like that, the first caveman would have picked up a lump of clay and just kind of, oh, I can form that into something. So it's really fundamental. And it's really calming as well. If you've had a stressful day, it's just really, really good. Good for the brain.
Proper hands-on
Yeah,
task you can
yeah.
set yourself.
And it's something which is really forgiving as well. You can sort of see yourself develop really quickly. And I think that's been one which it's really nice at seeing someone come in often with no confidence in themselves and a particular skill, or just being told that they're rubbish all their life, and then just kind of having gone just a bit of gentle guidance, and then just been got the look of the converted at the end. One of the first people that actually did the creature design course was, I think she was a full-time nurse. She just liked her sci-fi and stuff like that. So she signed up for the creature design course, and yeah, she was kind of a convert after that. So much so that she ended up applying for an apprenticeship down in Pinewood Studios as well, and she got it. So she basically, after that first kind of block of doing the creature design, so I gave her a reference for it as well. But she had something to show, so yeah, she really enjoyed it. Quite a few of my students have kind of moved on to get film work. So I'm usually asking them for a job myself.
Yeah, at least that way you're not just creating the next group of people doing them, you're creating almost an end and going like,
yeah.
remember to tell them about me when you get there.
Yeah. I kind of, it's Trojan horse sort of idea. So like, I'll train them up, insert them, then get them to head of department, so then they can employ me.
Quite right.
Yeah. Well, that might be a way of, I think that's another way of getting word of mouth around as well. If someone enjoys something, they're more likely to go on about it.
Well, they'll have a trust of your work, and that they'll obviously know that that's where their work stemmed from, having had a lot of input from yourself.
Yeah, I think so. I do tend to kind of I do my own project alongside them as well, so I'm not kind of sitting there hands off, going right, do that, which is just not the way you can teach this. You've just got to be kind of lead by example, I suppose. So a lot of these kind of smaller pieces, those are left over from a creature design, intro to creature design sort of course recently. One of them sort of just a Hanna-Barbera, so it's sort of shark, but yeah, so it's just nice to sort of kind of do something and kind of lead them that way.
Well, of course, absolutely everyone's got to start somewhere. And especially with creative jobs, it can be very difficult for people to decide where to begin. Or especially if you're dissuaded sometimes from following a creative passion, it's difficult to know what first steps to take. Would you have any advice for anyone thinking about getting involved in something like special effects?
Well, I think the first thing you want to know is that special effects often in the industry is broken into lots of different departments. So you'd have a prosthetics department, you'd have prop building department, or makeup effects. And within the industry itself, they tend to sort of train folk up into a particular area. And you train and that and move into that department. I am working from the outside of the industry, so I just do whatever the hell I want. And I think the best way to kind of make progress is just build whatever you want. So try and get a bit of variety in there. If it's so easy to just kind of take someone else's design and just try and copy that. And I think we're all individuals that just basically have a bit of fun, take inspiration. If you're doing creature design, so get some books out of the library and look at creatures in the wild, sort of on various different species and how weird they look, and sort of put them in the old blender, so if I can sort of see what. Sketching as well. Sketching is a really quick way of sort of just trying out ideas and form. But the end rule is that you never get anywhere if you just sit there and procrastinate about it. You've just got to jump in, and your first few models will probably be a bit crap, but the one after that will also be better, and the one after that will be better still. Until you'll find yourself having eureka moments, which I still do. I'm still learning myself, years and years on. You get what I call a eureka moment. Basically, you do something and it looks so amazing, you kind of realize that is everything that you did beforehand is kind of like obsolete. Yes. So it's almost like leveling up in a game. If you struggle through a certain level on a game, and you finally get through it, and then you realize you go through another couple of levels, and then you come back and sort of try it. And you go, how did I get stuck on this level? It's easy. It's so easy. Yes, of course, because you got a much better weapon and far better stamina or something later on. But it's just really about applying yourself. I mean, that's partly why I do the courses as well, is that I know what you're saying. It's sometimes people find it very difficult to get started. Well, being in a situation where there's someone sort of saying, you have to do this, and you put money down to sort of learn this and sort of like crack the whip and give you a bit of inspiration as well. It's a great way of doing it. I've had quite a few folk who have done one course and just really enjoyed that. And they're kind of, do the other one. Another one, which is kind of a completely different set of skills, so it becomes a bit, what will happen if I do this? So, yeah.
Because some people will come to you with the goal to have a specific career, whereas other people will come with the goal just to have fun. And I suppose you're working at both, really. Yeah,
well, that's one of the things I think, particularly college-led courses, or some of the higher level sort of courses, which I was talking about if you went down south, there's even kind of a restriction on who can apply. You've got to be of a certain standard. It's like one of these rides. You've got to be this tall to get in.
Yeah.
And it's just a bit of a shame because I think, you know, it's assuming that everyone who sort of wants to create a creature or a monster or something wants to work within the film industry. It's not necessarily. You might want to sculpt something and then want to run off molds of it and sort of sell them at conventions or, you know, stuff like that. So I've kind of opened the doors quite democratically to, yeah, anyone can do this. You don't have to do special effects. I mean, I don't solely do special effects work. I also do the teaching and also just do it for the pure joy of doing it. You know, so, yeah. We need more people up here willing to kind of just do their thing, I think.
Yeah.
So we need to encourage folk and remind folk higher up in the film industry here that we do have the talent and we do have the imagination and we do have the skills. It's just a case of that you can't grow a plant if you keep it in a coal bunker, you know, so you've got to put it in the greenhouse, give it light, give it water, give it the nutrients it needs, you know. So.
Well, thank you very much for having us, and thank you for
No
talking to
problem.
our lovely audience. But before we go, can you tell us where we might find you should we need to look at one of your courses?
Oh, you can find me here in the studio to begin with. But online, if you go to Gibbet Effects on Facebook, it usually keeps you up to date. Facebook, that's how you pronounce Gibbet Effects. Also on Instagram and Twitter. And usually you'll be able to find what courses are coming up. And usually run them throughout the year. So even if there doesn't seem to be anything up and running at the time, you know, guaranteed there will be later on in the year. Or you can visit the website, which is gibbeteffects.com. So that's got a lot of weird and wonderful stuff on there. Okay.
Excellent. So if you would like to have a look at some of the work not shown in the video so far, feel free to check out the webpage. You'll see the links below should you be interested in getting in touch. Thank you again, Callum.
No problem. Pleasure.
We love all the artwork you've been sending into the show. If you have stories, music or artwork of your own, please get in contact as we'd love to showcase it.